Welcome everyone to an impromptu discussion on Roe v. Wade /abortion /reproductive rights all the stuff that's happening at the moment in the US. Today with me, I have a fun panel of guests. We have Jacob, P. Barnes, Tom, and Deborah Grace. Deborah Grace is an author. Links to her books are in the description. So guys, abortion. How do we feel?
Abortion. Well, who wants to start?
Well, I think given the implications of what happened today, Deborah should probably be the first to sort of speak on the subject. I think that's probably fair.
Yeah. To be I didn't realize that it was just a bunch of dudes and Deborah, and I was like, man, like this looks bad straight away. It's always the men that seem to, but that's only because most of the people I know, my friends, and we're in Australia, and the time differences are just nuts. So luckily, Deborah was up at 4 a.m. and answered the call. So yeah.
Yeah, here I am. That's what Excedrin does for somebody. Caffeine. Yeah. So it was about 4 o'clock, and I'm at work, and it's Friday, and I see the headline that Roe v. Wade is overturned, and I am shocked. With the release and the leak of the Alito summary, that pre-leak, I thought we had enough noise. I thought we had enough pushback from that point until yesterday to kind of tell them we're not okay with this. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and they're running ramshot. I know it's going back to the states, and I'm kind of okay with that. But at the same time, that puts places like Arkansas in an island, if you will. There is not a neighboring state that allows abortion. So they have to drive 2 states away to find a place to safely have an abortion. And if anybody finds out, now we have a big problem. I'm not real up to date on which states have which laws. There's just so many right now that it's hard to keep up with what's going on at the state level, what trigger laws have been affected. What I do know is that apparently Connecticut is the safest place in the United States right now. Right now, if you go to Connecticut and you are sued by family, the state laws are basically like, we're not going to fund any effort to punish this woman. And on top of that, if you're in Connecticut, you can turn around and sue the people who are suing you, and it includes legal fees. So there's a lot of protections that are being put in place in Connecticut, but the rest of the country, I'm still trying to play catch up on all of this. But I did get in my car and was very emotional, let's just say.
So so you mentioned something about suing people. What's going on? Like, I didn't know that people could sue other family members.
There are some states that have those laws. Yeah, sorry, Deborah,
yes. Texas is the one that led that charge, of course. And basically, there are certain states that have these laws in effect that if you are found to have an abortion, the family members, like the father, if he is determined to be the father, he can sue. His parents can sue. His uncles and aunts can sue. And it's up to like $10,000 per family member against the mother for.
Like they each file their own claim.
Yeah, and the reason they do it that way is up until the overturning of Roe v. Wade, Texas technically couldn't make it a criminal charge to get an abortion. So the way that a lot of states have circumvented it is allowing it to be a civil charge.
Right.
because that's not specific. Like it'd take a pretty weird interpretation of Roe v. Wade as it was to sort of say that you couldn't create this weird civil litigious mess that Texas has got itself into. So yeah,
Right. I was wondering how Texas did that if you had a constitutional right.
Right.
Yeah, that makes
Well,
sense.
now there's a bounty.
So yeah,
Bounty.
what is it? Can you explain that? Like, what do you mean by bounty?
Well, like $10,000 per person suing. It's basically like a bounty. Now people will want to find women who are trying to have an abortion, and like they're even able to sue Uber drivers. Like if an Uber driver knows where you're going and what you're doing, they can sue you.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
This is more nuts than I thought. So if
Yeah,
someone in
it's a
Texas,
witch hunt. It's a witch
yeah,
hunt.
it literally is a witch hunt. It sounds like it anyway.
With
So
a reward.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So if someone is like, 2 or 3 weeks pregnant, does that matter? Does it matter the time?
Well,
the
it depends on
abortion
the
takes place?
state. There are certain states that have these trigger laws in place, and there's a few of them that still will allow for in a medical emergency, they'll still allow up to 20 weeks. But there are some laws, some states, I think Idaho is one of them, that it's like at conception. You cannot have an abortion after conception.
And some are talking about attaching murder charges to. And I think there's, I don't know which states, but I think there's 13 states that currently have trigger laws enacted because of the decision.
Right. So yeah, they're making it like a felony offense in some states, and then others it's just a nightmare financially for you. Then you're tied up in the justice system for quite a while. There are some states who are saying that even the doctors, if the doctors are caught giving an abortion without the proper channels or reasons, they could lose their medical license.
So
It's a shame.
Yeah.
It's a shame we don't have somebody here that would defend it, because I would be curious to ask them, what other medical decision do you not want to be between a mother and a doctor? Like, what other medical decision do you want the state to step in on?
Yeah.
But I guess their response would be they don't see it as a medical decision, do they? They see it as murder.
Right. And the majority of the pro-life that I hear just on social media is that they are considering the mother as the one who is the one responsible. Like they're not giving this responsibility to the men. It's like they get a free pass. And the only argument that I have come across that makes any sense that will give full responsibility to a man is for a woman to say, yes, I will have sex with you, but no, you are not allowed to ejaculate. But the problem with that even is, or you're not allowed to get me pregnant. Like I do not give you consent to get me pregnant, right? So there's that. But the only problem with that is like they've done studies on this and they found that 40% of pre-ejaculation contains sperm. So there's really no safe way at this point for women to have sex with a man and not be absolutely terrified and traumatized of getting pregnant.
Unless, of course, they use contraception, right?
Well, and even some states right now are putting that back on the table.
Yeah,
So,
the problem is there's I believe it's called a consenting opinion that was written into the decision that also targeted laws on same-sex marriages, the availability of contraceptives to couples, and also the part that I think is the most terrifying is the fact that it's looking at it's the change that made it unconstitutional for states to ban sodomy. So basically decriminalizing homosexuality in a lot of states. Those three decisions have been specifically mentioned in this, which I think is pretty terrifying, because it shows that the same hatred they have for abortion, they have for other sectors of the community that it looks like they're targeting as well.
Yeah, they're targeting all types of alternative lifestyles, to include there are certain schools in certain states that are now criminalizing the discussion of different genders in schools, and so they're basically putting a target on the people who have already been out, these kids in schools who have already been out for several years, and now those kids are in fear for retaliation, a change in social acceptance and tolerance, and so they're looking to move out of the states. Now that we have Roe v. Wade overturned, there are a lot of questions that come into play for me. It's like, okay, well, if a man can go and claim ownership over this unborn fetus or zygote even, does that mean that he now has rights to prevent that woman from moving out of the state? Like, if she leaves, is that now kidnapping?
Oh wow.
Yeah.
In regards to oh, sorry.
No, go.
I was gonna say in regards to Roe v. Wade. So I heard before this all happened that they were chipping away at the laws regarding Roe v. Wade. Is that true? Was it a gradual sort of movement, or was it just a random sudden event?
I actually don't know. What I do know is that it includes a lot of privacy laws. That was what I don't think a lot of people understand. I think it's been more on the hush hush, and I don't think mainstream media has really given it much attention. Although I have to admit, I don't have cable right now because I couldn't handle the politics and the news for a great deal of what's happened in the last couple of years, and it was just too much. I can do religion or politics. I can't really do both at the same time. Too much cortisol, guys. Okay, so but what it doesn't seem to be in the news much. I mean, even on I do look at headlines online, but I don't see people talking about the HIPAA laws, the privacy laws. That was one of the biggest things about Roe v. Wade. It was a private decision between you and your doctor. Nobody else could find out whether you were pregnant or not. So that privacy is now removed. That doesn't just convey to a woman and her doctor. That conveys to any patient and the doctor about what's going on with your health. And now other agencies can find out about your private medical decisions. So to me, I think that's really startling. What if they're so gung-ho about people having children? Now are they going to go after, what happens if a young man wants a vasectomy? Is that bad now? Is that also preventing life?
Yeah. I've heard the morning after pill IUDs, but that's about it. I've heard precious little mention of vasectomies around the whole discussion.
I know, right? But I mean,
think,
wouldn't that be a man thing?
Yeah, well, yeah, and men don't get affected by these laws because they're drafted by men. But it wouldn't, well, probably not. Well, I don't know. But making a stupid joke. But the point is wouldn't a vasectomy in the eyes of these people stop a pregnancy from happening? So it's not really like an abortion per se, or a life coming into the world.
Right. Well, there are states that are looking at stricter laws against contraception. So, I think these are really extremist views. I do know that Amy Coney Barrett, the Supreme Court Justice, she's Catholic, and a lot of Catholics don't believe in contraception. So beliefs dictate action, and we see that absolutely happening. These three Supreme Court justices that Trump put into place basically lied under oath because they were talking about precedents not being questioned. Now all of a sudden there's a discussion about super precedents, and I'm like, what the heck is the difference between precedents and super precedents?
I know. I'm gonna come.
That's like that's like saying murder and super murder. Like what? There's no difference.
Yeah, there's a few videos going around today, obviously, of footage of all five judges that made the decision, all lying about what they do about Roe v. Wade during the Senate committee. It's like, wow, okay, that's a great way to introduce yourself as the protector of the most important document in your country. It's just insane.
Right.
During the 2016 presidential debates, though, Trump said that it's a guarantee that, in his eyes, that this will happen, given the judges that he was appointing. So he knew what he was doing.
Right. Right.
Could this be the first time that Trump actually did something that he said he did? It's
also interesting because there are some people who still believe that Trump's president, right? So maybe he is pulling the strings from behind the
he's pulled these strings. He pulled all the strings he needed to.
I posted in the Discord, David, the resolution from the Texas Republican Party. Don't know if you had a chance to have a look at it, but the second largest Republican Party in the US they've gone a little bit off the rails, to be honest.
I find it so crazy that a president is just allowed to implement these judges. I think they were into the Supreme Court that are just completely biased. I'm surprised there wouldn't be some prevention for that to make sure that the judges each have differing opinions, that way fostering discussion. Instead, it's just this, they're all sort of focused on that one idea and they all agree on it. It's a bit undemocratic.
They've allowed it to become partisan. Yeah, sorry.
Well,
exactly, yeah.
They're also, like I said, beliefs dictate actions, but these people obviously don't read their Bible. Otherwise, they would know that this God of the Bible is not pro-life.
I know. That's this whole part that gets me is I'm writing a video at the moment on is the Bible pro-life, and I'm just looking at story after story after story, like God commanding the Israelites to murder the Amalekites, kill the infants, explicitly kill the infants, or
sorry, if I could just jump in to defend
Jacob is a Christian and he's
okay.
No, but I'll just say one thing. That's a bit contextual, situational, right? It's purely the Amalekites, because I know there's also another part that in Psalms that addresses the Babylonians, where it encourages the Israelites to bash the Babylonians' babies against trees. It's wild, but it's purely contextual and situational, right?
But you can't say that. Yeah,
so how
wouldn't abortions be contextual then?
Contextual to because when they're killing the Amalekites, it's purely the Amalekites, right? Whereas when it's about abortion, it's about any child of any.
It's about aborting fetuses.
But whereas Amalekites, it's purely the Amalekites. I don't know. But another thing as well, though, is you are right about Christians not reading the Bible, because in another sense, you could say, the New Testament also says you shall love and whatnot. You have Jesus' message, and that would mean that we should be allowing pro-choice because it's to the liberty of other people. Christians should be respecting liberty and freedom, in my opinion, and not restricting it further, purely based on their beliefs.
Okay, so no. All right. So first of all, you have Numbers 5, which has the abortion formula that was concocted by God, right? So he causes a miscarriage, and his formula that he created does just that, causes a miscarriage. It's a forced abortion concocted formula by God. Okay.
I
Then you
have heard, just to stop you there, I have heard apologists say that it never mentions that she was pregnant, even though it would defeat the whole purpose of the bitter water.
Yeah.
And it's really just about forced sterilization, which I don't think is much better. But anyway, continue.
Well, either way, that's not pro-life.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, you're then you have the flood, right? So how many pregnant women were there? You have the Passover, firstborn children being completely decimated, pregnant firstborn mothers die, and the child dies. So it's not age. It's not focused on just one specific age group. It's all ages. So if the Pharaoh had been a firstborn, technically he should have died too. Apparently he wasn't. But and then all the animals are dying in the Passover, firstborn, in the flood, firstborn. Revelation, he comes back drenched in blood with a sword. Then you have scorched earth death, like a third of the stars and third of the grasses, and all these people just dying in that. And if that wasn't bad enough, then you have in Revelation 20 verse 7, you have God who releases Satan to deceive the nations. Those people don't get eternal life, so that's not pro-life either. From Genesis to Revelation, the God of the Bible is not pro-life. Even Jesus, he says, those who wouldn't submit to me, bring them before me and slay them. That's in Luke 19:27. That's the end of a parable. He is describing what he meant in that parable.
But I think the problem is you can interpret any of these things any way you like, right? Like that's the issue. You can look at the Amalekites being murdered, and just like Jacob did, going, yeah, but that was just the Amalekites. It's like, I would always push back and go, were the Amalekites human? Is that a pro?
It wasn't just the Amalekites. Look at all of Jericho. Jericho was decimated except for one family too.
But then you could just the point is, like, I guess people with religion, people can kind of pick and choose whatever they like, even though I think it's not. I agree with you, Deborah, for sure. I just think that what happens with religion is people just choose what they think the Bible says. Another thing is, like, the thing that bothers me the most is everyone will quote Psalms 139 and say, God knits us together in the womb. God never said that he knit people together in the womb. David said that about God. David was saying, like, God, you knit me together in the womb, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
God never said, I knit you together in the womb. He's saying that to God. Like, are we going to start taking like what Solomon said in Ecclesiastes when he said, we are all but human. We are all just animals. We are all, life is meaningless. Are we going to take that as like what God thinks? Like, no, this is like people's ideas. They're people's things that they're saying about God. But like the instructions in 1 Samuel, to the Amalekites or the Jericho, they're instructions that are written that say they're from God. They're from Yahweh. Like the destruction of the entire world in the flood is from God. Like God.
Right.
And like it makes, like, I'm in my script I'm writing, and this is part of what I want to have this conversation, is in the script I'm writing, I'm like, to take the idea that God knits together everyone in the womb, knows their days before them, and there's this omniscient God, and he knits together someone in the womb only for them to drown in a global flood the day after their birth, not only paints God to be like, it paints God out to be a monster. Like, and I'm sitting here saying, like, if there is a creator of the universe, I don't believe in, I'm an agnostic atheist, I don't believe in God. But if you believe in God, you're telling me God knits people together in the womb, stop teasing God. Like, you're making him out to be a crazy maniac. Like, who knits someone together in the womb and then just drowns them, like holds them under the water like the next day? Like, that is just insane. Like, he's omniscient.
But, well, not just that. We're saddled with this original sin from birth. So he may have knit you together in the womb, but the minute you're born, you are saddled with that original sin.
Well, that's sorry. Some denominations, but I don't believe in original sin. But yeah, no, it's an arguable concept.
No, that's a very rare viewpoint of Christians in the United States to not believe in original sin. Because then why did Jesus come? Like that's at that point, you have unintentional sin and intentional sin, and there's a big dichotomy about what happens there. So yeah, most people in the United States believe in original sin. That is why Jesus had to come.
Jacob's a fun Christian. I like Jacob. Like Jacob is one of the mods on the Discord server, and he was the first mod actually. And what I found about Jacob is he's quite reasonable for his age and for the type of Christianity he's in. I can get behind a lot more than the one I was in anyway. I just wanted to show everyone a response from. I'll share my screen. A response from, tell me if you can hear this, from Dr. William Lane Craig about this decision. Can you hear that?
No.
Nah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, that's exactly what you wanted, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. How did I do this? Hang on.
Anyway, while you're looking at that, David, to put what you were saying in a modern context, why are there so many couples that struggle so hard to have children if they genuinely want to? Like, why is I believe the child mortality rate in America is it's pretty embarrassing when compared to other peers around the world, and a lot of the states that have the higher mortality rates are the ones that have these trigger laws now that will only increase mortality rates. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
if we're knitted together in the womb, why do these things happen? But yeah.
Well,
I think there's like one out of four couples struggle with infertility now, at least in the United States. I don't know what that figure looks like worldwide. And then every single pregnancy runs a risk of the mother dying. That you just can't get away from that. That just is what it is. Both of my sisters had very serious issues surrounding their pregnancies and almost died. I had one sister who had toxemia and had to be rushed for an emergency C-section. And I had another sister who had a miscarriage. She didn't expel the fetus all the way. She was almost 5 months pregnant, so they had to do a DNC. And then her third pregnancy, her second child, she almost bled to death after giving birth. So, I mean, these aren't issues to sneeze at, but right now you have women who are going to wait as long as possible to figure out whether they want a child or not. There are women who aren't going to have prenatal care because they want to deny the fact that they're pregnant because they're so traumatized and terrorized to go to a doctor. There are so many more risk factors at place for women dying because of this decision.
And if you look at what the Texas Republicans put out this week, one section in it basically states that it's a Republican Party's policy if they continue to lead in Texas is that they will attach. So any children that stay on their parents' insurance, right? Because a lot of I don't know a lot about insurance in America, but I believe it's tied to employment, and a lot of employment gets your family health insurance as well. A child will stay, or parents will have a right to access the medical records of someone up to the age of 26, so long as they remain on the parents' health insurance. So if the parents are paying for health insurance up to the age of 26, your parents have a right to your medical records. Which
wouldn't be moving off their parents' insurance.
A lot of people wouldn't know. Not if you're going to college. Yeah, not if you're studying or
right.
any sort of higher education. So that's going to include a lot of people.
Yeah.
I'm just noticing, Deborah, your video isn't coming through on the stream. I don't know why that is, but I don't know if you want to reconnect or something, because it's it's just for some reason not going through. But
My
I don't know
video
what-
is not going through.
Yeah, I don't know if it's your audio as well, because I can't hear it, but we're all
Okay.
looking. Maybe just
You want me-
disconnect and then maybe just
Okay.
like disconnect and then connect again.
Okay. All right. I'll try that.
All right. Tom's video's out now. Are you making a joke, Tom?
The Supreme Court.
Oh, we can hear it now. I heard it.
Again, the
Okay,
sound's
cool.
working.
I actually downloaded it. I might wait for. All right, so it's working now.
Today we learned that the Supreme Court.
All right, cool. I might wait for Deborah to come back, and then we can. I thought Tom was you were making a joke, Tom, when you left.
What would be the punchline? I don't.
That
The
Deborah's video
strength
wasn't
falling
working.
apart.
Deborah's video wasn't working. All right, we can see
No,
now.
it's going to get a beer.
Okay.
All right, cool. The video is now working. All right, that's great. Okay. Awesome. So let's watch this video from Dr. William Lane Craig.
Today we learned that the Supreme Court, in a decisive 6-3 decision, voted to overturn Roe versus Wade, which legalized abortion on demand in our country. This is reason for tremendous celebration and rejoicing today. I want to first of all congratulate all of those who have labored for decades tirelessly in the pro-life cause, sometimes against impossible odds. Today's victory is truly theirs. I also want to thank the 6 Supreme Court justices for their intelligence, objectivity, and courage in making this decision. Whatever you think of the ethics of abortion, legal scholars on both sides of the debate have long recognized that Roe versus Wade was very weak constitutional law and was therefore ripe for being overturned. And so this needed to happen. Moreover, the Roe versus Wade decision was ethically monstrous. It dehumanized an entire class of human beings, denying to the unborn babies human dignity and worth. But the struggle now is not over. The issue now returns to the states to decide. And so we have to renew our efforts to ensure that we elect state legislators as well as national representatives who will enact legislation aimed at protecting the rights of the unborn and affirming their full worth and human dignity. But although this is just the new beginning of the struggle, I think it's worth pausing to savor this tremendous victory today, a victory for life and for the cause of human rights.
Definitely an interesting take.
If I may say, the guy's a bit of an asshole at the beginning, because he's sort of gloating, right? I mean, he's saying, "Oh, congratulations on the success and victory." Like, I mean, no matter what beliefs you have, it's pretty rude to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not a violent person, but I'd love to slap some of the smug off his face. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's smug, exactly.
I'm curious how he gets to, no matter what your opinion on abortion is, Roe v. Wade is weak or whatever.
Yeah, constitutionally weak. I was curious what he meant by that.
Let's say that's true. How does that not, like, how does he make the argument that that's relevant no matter what your position on abortion is? Like, if you're pro-choice, then that's absolutely relevant because it's serving a purpose still.
What he's trying to do is he's trying to separate the SCOTUS decision from the religious side of it. He's trying to create this fantasy land where SCOTUS didn't make this decision based on religion. He's trying to give an alternate explanation as to why SCOTUS should have done it. so as to which I think is important, because was it I can't remember the name of the pastor had his tax status revoked for deliberately making sort of statements towards one party or the other. So I think that a lot of I don't know whether does he have a favorable tax status in the US? Does this guy? I'm not sure. I know
Are
much about.
you referring to Greg Locke?
Greg Locke was the one that's had it removed from him. Does the gentleman we just watched have the same sort of status? He might need to protect it.
I don't know. Probably.
He's not a pastor. He's a philosopher.
Right.
Right, okay.
So if he's speaking in front of a bunch of people, then yeah, you're not supposed to be really talking about politics too much. Greg couldn't toe that line at all. He was sprinting right over that line. So
yeah.
But to be fair, Ruth Bader Ginsburg even said that that law protecting abortion was constitutionally weak because it was surrounding the privacy between a doctor and the patient.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really what had kicked it off. There wasn't a constitutional law that was only just protecting abortion. And so there are some states that will now have stronger laws protecting abortion than the federal government ever had.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it wasn't very strong constitutionally, and even like I said, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg admitted to that.
I'm curious as to if you think there's anything good that comes out of this. Like, is this going to get Democrats to the polls for the midterms?
Oh, absolutely.
And like, as you said before, is it going to make stronger laws in the states? Is there anything else that you see like positive coming out of it?
I certainly think that there are a lot more women that are sitting up and paying attention. There are a lot more disadvantaged groups who are sitting up and paying attention because both of the opinions that came out surrounding this change, both of them are talking about what's next and who is next on the chopping block, if you will. So yeah, we have same-sex marriage and the protections surrounding other alternative gender lifestyles that could potentially be on the chopping block, to include even I forget who I heard it from. It may have been you, David, who was talking about the fringe opinions of some of these Supreme Court justices and people in politics who want to return to witch hunting.
I'm not sure if I said that, but that sounds.
Then that was somebody I heard yesterday that was just talking about that, and I was pretty shocked.
I did retweet Thomas Westbrook, who did say, like, welcome to the 1600s, we're back to witch hunting.
Right. No, there are, I mean, Greg Locke has a lot of influence, unfortunately. There are a lot of Christians who enjoy listening to his sermons, and he has come out basically saying autism is demonic. It's not a real mental problem. It's not a health issue. It's demons. And then he has come out, in strong opposition to people who he considered to be witches, defined per the Bible. This arbitrary understanding of what sin is or what is wicked per the Bible has it's completely superstitious in my personal opinion. You have something that is offending this God of the universe who created people with foreknowledge about who or what they would be in life, and is somehow this arbitrary offense. It just doesn't make sense when this God has never come out and condemned slavery, but somehow what you do in your bedroom is offending him?
Jacob, as our resident Christian, how do you answer something like that?
To what exactly?
Like, why did God talk about homosexuality but didn't talk about slavery? Well, he did talk about slavery, but he didn't like say slavery was bad. How do you reconcile that with your Christian faith?
Well, I suppose slavery at the time of the writing of the Torah was more socially relevant than homosexuality, because you got to remember as well, homosexuality as well wasn't that significant, I think, at the time of the kingdoms of Judah and Israel, right? Because I don't know why, but I think in many Semitic nations there wasn't that much homosexuality, which is, I don't know why, I find interesting.
But that would be unusual, because civilizations before those were known to have a lot of homosexuality, right?
Right.
And was quite common within a lot of civilizations that predate
It always
those.
has been. Always
It would
has
be,
been.
yeah, it would be weird.
Like that's in like Babylon.
To think that just that period of history didn't have homosexuality for some reason.
No, I'm saying that the region where the Torah was written, I don't know why it didn't have that much homosexuality. Unless there's Greece. So they must have known about it, but I guess it would have been as relevant as slavery was. But
well, if you have
conflict.
determined that your specific God somehow is offended by male and male interactions, like, then I could see why it would be less visible, or it would be less people wouldn't be open about it, so you wouldn't think it was as prevalent, but it apparently was prevalent in like all civilizations. All recorded history has had that. And why would God create a law, right, which apparently has been very completely misinterpreted in the context anyway, about what people do in their bedrooms? Like, that doesn't make sense. If the only thing he seemed to care about was pedestry, and that has been retranslated and changed in the text to mean homosexuality, when we didn't even have that word until the 1800s.
I saw that where it's like, is it the one about the man shall not sleep with a boy? And then people mistook that as, yeah.
Right.
It's pretty interesting, that one. But I still think, right, they would say a man shall not sleep with a young girl. I mean, why else would they write boy? It's, I don't know,
because it didn't matter. Like, the girls had that much less worth, and as soon as a girl had I guess flowered or blossomed, then
I was going to say blossomed.
all bets were off the table, right? So, I mean, even in the Bible, you have the biblical God taking Mary at 12 years old. Now, the scriptures talk about her consent, but I don't understand how a 12-year-old is going to give full informed consent 12 years before her prefrontal cortex is fully developed. But God didn't seem to care.
Do we know that she was 12 years old, though, or is that just
all the biblical scholars are in consensus too? She was somewhere between 12, and the oldest they have her at is 14. But Catholic schools across the nation in the United States are teaching that she was 12 years old.
I think it was normal at the time for much younger women to be with older men.
Sure, that might have been like normal, but that's an appeal to population. That doesn't make it right.
The issue that I think that people have
same with slavery. It might have been more common back then. It doesn't make it right.
Oh no, of course, I agree with you. But I'm just saying, like, it's hard to justify excuse me, it's hard to justify people saying that they shouldn't have done it when it was just, why wouldn't they have done it? I suppose, where it's like
No,
everyone
it
else
makes
was doing it, and it was.
No, it makes sense. It's just when you position that the Bible is instructions or inspired by an all-knowing creator, it seems weird that the morality of the Bible seems to increase as at the same rate as the populations of the world started learning. Like, rape is probably not good, murder is probably not good. Like, you probably couldn't, and then even like Jesus took it further to say like thought crimes aren't good. Which I mean, although there's some issues with that, there is some wisdom in not coveting thy neighbor's wife, or not there's some good morality from 2,000 years ago. We've come a lot further since then, but it just seems weird that someone will say, well, this is the holy book given by the creator of the universe, and then say, but what of course they're doing slavery and killing homosexuals. That's what they were doing. Everyone was doing at the time. It's like, well, isn't the Bible supposed to be a holier book? Isn't the Bible supposed to give instructions? If the Bible said like, wash your hands after going to the toilet, there's these things called germs, hey, everyone's equal, like that would be something to look at, like if it was going right against the grain of like society.
Right, but you just, what we don't find is an omnicoherent message from this God of the universe for all time. That's what we don't have.
Yeah.
So to me, that makes the probability of this being inspired, because it's not omnicoherent. That's one of the big things. You've got it written over 1,500 years by over 40 authors in 3 languages. But it's supposed to be easy, but it's not moral for all time, and it's not for all people. And the 1611 King James Bible had 16 or 14 more books in it than we have now. Like, that's not omnicoherent.
Yeah. So I just had some questions from the audience, not questions, but statements that I think we could all enjoy.
Spicy takes from the audience.
Some spicy takes. Okay, so someone called Prabesh Sharma said, I, for one, think it won't change because people who want abortions will just move to another state, but there's more. Let me continue. Abortions for me are nothing but murderers, barring rape, minors, and maybe a cutoff period of 3 weeks at most. Is that and that is debatable. There is no moral justification.
Let me just pause on that last one.
Yeah.
Because most women don't find out that they're pregnant until they're about 6 weeks along.
Yeah. So that would be like a pragmatic problem.
And when you're talking, and 6 weeks is a really sort of important, like, part of it, because isn't one of the laws in the US called the heartbeat bill, based on the misconception that there's a heartbeat at 6? There isn't a heartbeat at 6 weeks.
Yeah. So, but it's extremely taken out of context, because what we see on a monitor is it's basically an electrical chamber moving. It's not a fully formed heart. No. If you don't have a fully formed heart at 3 weeks, right? So that's about the time. 21 days is about the time the heartbeat starts, but it's not a fully formed heart. It's electrical currents that look like a heartbeat.
It's called a chemical pregnancy, isn't it?
Oh, well, no. From my understanding,
chemical pregnancy different.
It's a part of the development where a group of cells starts to produce an electrical impulse that eventually becomes.
That's the word I was trying to think of.
Yeah, that it eventually becomes the sinus node, which produces the heartbeat. But the only noise that's made on the ultrasound is the ultrasound machine itself. It's not a heartbeat, and it's a little bit. Which is why I find funny, and with a lot of the stuff that Prabesh is saying here, it'd be really nice to talk to a pro-lifer that doesn't have to use like histrionics to sort of put their argument forward. Like murder, we all understand murder to be a like generally an adult killing another adult. right? There's other words for when you do it at other ages. A murder's a human being killing another human. Why does that happen? Why is it so important to use words like babies, murderers, and stuff like this in the debate? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. It feels like you need to get overly emotional about it. Yeah, sorry, Tom.
Oh, they're just trying to make an appeal to emotion. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Right. But they're not going to use the appeal to emotion from the other side of the aisle. That's the problem that I have. It's like, how do you excuse force? Okay, so first of all, we have world organizations who have already determined that forcing a woman to be pregnant is considered torture. We already have that. I think it's the United Nations who has determined that forced birth is torture. There's no ambiguity about that. But when you're talking about the appeal to emotion, they're not taking into consideration that what if a woman who's 25 years old and she's got her own apartment and she's, out late one night and somebody drugs her drink and she accidentally gets pregnant, right? She doesn't know because she has this memory loss the next day and just thinks she had a great time. Okay, cool. 3 weeks later, she finds out she's pregnant. She doesn't know who the father is, and she's not financially equipped or mentally equipped to raise this child. But now all of a sudden, she's being forced to carry that child to term. Are you kidding me? Nobody's taking these one-offs into consideration, which is why having that conversation with your doctor and understanding your own personal situation. This is a one-size-fits-all trying to force that on women and move the United States further away from other developed countries and understanding their freedoms. They're saying, oh, the life of the potential life now has more rights than a contributor to society.
I don't even think that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
I don't even think they're not willing to make the appeal to emotion for the other side. They're not even willing to make the appeal to emotion once the kid's born, like, because they're also then going to not advocate for sort of, I don't know what you call it, benefits and support for the child and the mother once the child is born.
Right.
What you'd probably call in America as Marxist social strategies. Part of some sort of agenda.
Call it whatever you want, but you have to have it.
Prabash continued, hearing all those pro-choice take the moral high ground is just baffling. I, for one, won't validate any moral point from people that have zero remorse for ending their own babies. None whatsoever. And then next point was, apologies, guys, but unless someone does not convince me that it isn't life, I, for one, wouldn't mind if they even hang them by a gallows. So,
spicy.
This is a spicy take. But the thing is, this is what always bothers me. When someone says, can someone talk me out of this nonsense? Because it must be nonsense, because it seems so obvious to me. When someone says that's when life starts in the womb or whatever, I fail to understand what they're even fucking talking about, because there's a living cell in a mother, a living cell in a father. There's no, like, it's not like abiogenesis is fucking happening every single time there's like a new person being born. The life doesn't start, it's already started. It started 3.4 billion years ago, or 3.78 billion years ago. Like it's insane to me. And then just to touch on my point by adding a comment, but then we can go back to this. Someone said, I wonder if understanding the teachings of evolution might influence how people feel about abortions, particularly the definition of life. Because
real quick. Okay, so here's something to consider. I don't know if Prabesh is taking his cue from the Bible and this consideration of life or not, but the Bible says, even in that scriptures, it says that the life doesn't begin until breath, right? That is absolutely 100% the definition of life in the Bible.
Where does it say that? Out of
Yeah, where does it say that? I'm just curious.
So when God breathed the breath of life into Adam, he became a man.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah,
But I
and
think
then
that's more.
when you have Elijah laying on the boy 3 times and he comes back to life, he takes a breath and he comes back to life. You have, I mean, that's really what it talks about. But on top of that, you also have the censuses that were taken in the wilderness, right? You were not supposed to count an infant under the age of 1 month old. So God didn't even count them as lives in the censuses. So, I mean, I don't know where he's getting his understanding of life. To me, a life is independent. Like you can't separate the unborn life from the mother because they're connected. That baby's feeding off the mother. All of her nutrients, her energy, it is fully 100% dependent on a mother. You don't have like a woman giving birth to an egg and it's independent. That has more credibility as a independent life to me than something that is growing inside the mother.
I think there was a US senator that made a comparison between a fetus and a turtle egg. And it was one of the strangest things I've ever seen in US politics, apart from everything that Marjorie Taylor Greene does. But someone who sounded almost half rational, talking about two things that just can't be compared. It's
I just
you wouldn't walk around just crushing turtle eggs. So therefore, you should be abortion. I'm like, yeah, wow, dude. Like, there's a lot of steps in between those two.
They hear the word egg and they're like, "Oh yeah, egg, like lady eggs." That's like the.
Well, how about all those chicken eggs? You know.
Well, actually, talking about chicken eggs, I remember someone come up to me, like one of my Christian friends, and they said, "Huh, so vegans, all vegans would have to be pro life, right?" And I was like, and I thought about it because I never thought about it before. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I was like, actually, I don't think they would be. I was like, because they're concerned with sentient life, right? And I was like, so they would actually be considerate of the woman, who's an animal, a human, and says, well, she's suffering, therefore the sentience of the fetus isn't around until 24 weeks. So they're probably more pro-choice, I would say, than pro-life. And the person just looked at me like, he thought he had like a gotcha, like he thought he had like a, and then it literally took me 2 seconds to think about it, and it's like I could see that he was looking at me like, oh, okay, of course you'd think like that, like, you know, I've gone too deep for him or something, and he just kind of was like smugged it off, but yeah. So someone just so Prabhash replied, no disrespect, but I do not see it regarding emotions. Not saying mother won't, but I will always side with defenseless first. That drunk logic is no, because it is, of course, action. So Prabhash, please join the server. I used to be
pro-life.
Yeah, so we actually should get into that. But Prabhash, I mean, if you've got these, or Prabhash, I don't know how to say your name, sorry. Join the server. You're welcome to. Jump on to my Twitter and reach out to me, and I'll send you a link. And we can argue on here. So someone else mentioned this. There's also things in the Bible that talk about life being in the blood. I'm no medical expert, but the babies are in the womb filled with blood. I'm just curious because I'm no medical expert.
Well, that's completely out of context.
Yeah.
Also, I can take something out of context as well. When Jesus says, if your left hand causes you to sin, cut it off. And if your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. What if your baby causes you to sin? Cut it out, cut out your fetus. Like, does that also work? I don't know.
That's
probably not.
The issue you raised again, Dave, with the interpretation.
Okay, real quick. What if your penis causes you to sin? Should you cut it off?
No, God would never command such a thing.
I'm just saying, exactly. Of course he wouldn't, because this is
just the tip.
Right. Yeah, just the tip. But that's exactly what the hypocrisy is here. They're trying to criminalize women for having sex, but there's no accountability for the man. So like if God tells you that you're lusting with your eye, that you should pluck it out, logic to me says that if your penis is causing you to sin, cut it off. Right? But here I am saying all this, and I was pro-life up until like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, tell us about that. How does one go from being pro-life to pro-choice?
Well, the one argument that was for me was huge is that I cannot be forced to give blood or to give a kidney or to give a bone marrow transplant. I cannot be forced to do that, like ever. So because of that, if I find out that somehow I got pregnant, and I don't want to carry that child, understanding that other countries, world organizations have deemed that to be torture. And here I am giving nutrients to something that I don't want. And the reasons are vast, and sometimes they're heartbreaking. Like, you know, in cases of rape or in cases of a husband who says, oh, you're not supposed to withhold from me because the Bible tells you you can't withhold from me. And he's not allowing her to be on any sort of contraception. Now she's being forced to be a mother. Again, how many times? Like, there are cases where these women are in such Stockholm syndrome based on the mind control tactics that are in the Bible. It's a lot of my second book, by the way. And here we have a woman who could be having 10, 15 children because of this mindset. That to me is not, that's not moral. Forcing a woman to do something that she doesn't want to do, how is that any different from rape?
And it's such a restriction on what a lot of people are going to choose to do with their lives in a lot of these states. Like which is why when you break down all the pro-life, right, all that's left is control, which is really what it's about, right? It's about controlling people. It's about making sure that there's less people that have choice in what they do in their lives, which is just insane. In my life, I've seen a couple of occasions where large groups of people have gained a massive amount of rights and have been emancipated from previous rules. The most recent in Australia was our plebiscite on same-sex marriage, which was passed, decriminalizing in every state. I was alive when in 1994 the last state in Australia decriminalized homosexuality, which was Tasmania. But I've never seen so many people lose so much in a single day. It's insane.
Well, now we've literally gone from being an independent, autonomous, sovereign species of the human race to being property of the man.
And that was going to be another question for you, Deborah, just on what the vibe is over in the US at the moment. Because I remember the plebiscite, there was a buzz in the air, like even when you went out in public, that we'd done something, that we'd achieved something pretty good, right? Have you been out? Have you spoken to anyone? Is there any sort of buzz in the because all we see is the protests, right? Like is there any sort of general conversation or buzz around it in the community?
I can't tell you how many times I've heard women who just broke down and cried. Yeah, wow. This is traumatizing for women. We are now considered property of men. This is a form of slavery. If we don't have our own specific choices for any aspect of our life, you are a slave to whomever that you have to answer to. And so, yes, it's a huge amount.
I've heard that someone has said that, like, I think it was Matt Dillahunty. He said he doesn't debate the morality of abortions anymore because he says that, you know, abortions are not a termination of a life; it's a termination of a pregnancy. And
right.
the fetus's viability for life goes down to 0% because of an abortion, but it's like a knock-on effect for that. It's not like a direct cause. It's not like I think sometimes conservatives think that people just like love murdering babies. And I think that what they do is they go, I don't want to have an abortion, so therefore no one should have an abortion. Where,
Right.
like, I mean, like for me, I don't know if I would have an abortion under certain circumstances. Like, probably there might be some circumstances, I don't know. But if, you know, in another universe or whatever. But like, I don't know. But I'm free to make that choice. Like, I can make that choice. Imagine like, I want to talk to pro-lifers and say, imagine if you wanted to have children and the government said, no, you're not allowed to have children. Like, fuck you. Like, we're making the decision. People have voted. You now no longer have the right to have a child. Like, we're going to...
I mean, that's how China was for a long time. You had a one-child limit.
One-child
You
policy.
could not have any more than one child.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was considered communism, and that was considered something that was demonized by the rest of the world, including all these people who are talking about the pro-life movement here in the United States. Those people are anti one-child limit, but they're not arguing for the opposite side of the spectrum here. And as when I was pro-life, I was arguing, well, there's always adoption. Well, adoption doesn't belong in the same category as abortion. Adoption is the alternative to parenting. Pregnancy is an alternative to potential childhood, giving birth, potential birth.
I think anyone
There's
who
a
makes
big
that
difference
argument,
between the two, and they don't belong in the same category. And when you have this influx of unwanted children, you are now causing trauma to many people by putting a child into the foster and adoption care system, which is always traumatizing, not sometimes traumatizing. It's always traumatizing.
And I've heard certain right-wing pundits sort of talk about someone going into the foster system a better outcome than going to a same-sex couple.
Oh yeah, that's so.
Which is just so antithetical to anything that's understood about how well children do in different scenarios.
I think anyone who wants to say that adoption is an option should be forced to sit there and watch a woman give birth and then give her child away. I don't think you're allowed to have that position until you witness that.
And the same goes for, I don't think if you don't have a womb, if you don't have those parts, then you don't get to speak on the subject, really, like about my choice. And the fact that there's 6 Supreme Court justices and not all of them have a flower, they should not have been able to make this decision, full stop.
Well, on the other side of that, I think it was like 8 out of the 9 Supreme Court justices that ruled for Roe v. Wade were men. So, yeah, I think I understand your point, but like at the same time,
they weren't ruling on abortion. They were ruling on privacy.
Yeah, they were ruling for choice. Yeah,
and plus,
so
I think
now that it encompassed abortion, the men shouldn't have had a say. This should have been a women-only vote.
And I think the important distinction between the two, Tom, would be that when they were making that decision, they were making a decision that would allow additional rights, and they were kind of in step with what I would hope to be a lot of women's opinion on it. To make the reverse decision, to revoke something that's been a right for 5 decades,
right?
Old white men probably shouldn't have been. And that's the thing that annoys me the most about seeing people smug and seeing this as a victory. Like their coffee and cornflakes tasted exactly the same for them. Today, they wake up, they don't have to get an abortion, they don't have to use contraceptives if they don't want to. Nothing changes apart from this feel good that they obviously have from fighting this crazy
but there's
this crazy culture war that the US seems dragged into. It's insane.
From those people, the step down to reality is so far. That I don't think they'll ever see it.
The men in power right now are so disconnected, but the problem is they'll never be connected to this issue. They have no skin in the game.
I think one. Oh, sorry, go.
No, go.
I was gonna say, I think one interesting point of discussion about abortion that I don't see that much, and I don't know if it's a weak or a strong argument, but I really personally like the argument of potentiality, where it's like, are you really gonna abort a baby having no clue of what it could become, or also the idea of, even like you were saying before, where it's like when you abort a baby, you're not preventing life, you're preventing pregnancy. One could also argue, no, you are preventing life because pregnancy is the potentiality to become life, right? So at that point of view, the one argument I do semi-agree with is the argument for potentiality, where it's like, where that child can become anything, and you're just, as a person, you're limiting that ability for that child to have any form of progress.
Before we respond to this, can I just say to everyone in chat, if you're not subscribed to David, hit that subscribe button. And
doing the Lord's work.
Yeah,
the
doing
Dark
the Lord's
Lord's
work. And also check out Deborah's books. There's 2 links in the description as well.
And jump on David's Discord.
Don't come at me like that.
Community.
Don't up me. You two are just making me look like a piece of shit. All right. Thank you for doing my work. But that was really good. Just to give everyone some context of how this all started, by the way, Tom there came over to my house today and started drinking Kilkenny, and we started having discussions about this. And then he convinced me we should do a live stream. And as you can see, he's still drinking Kilkenny, and so am I. So it's been so I apologize if I'm a little rusty / drunk, but yes, there are some more people wanting to join. But Mr. Arthur, I don't normally let people join without a camera, but Mr. Arthur is a big fan.
Oh, awesome, Mr. Arthur, nice.
Mr. Arthur is the Discord user, but his mic is not connecting, so I can't actually add him. But yeah, when he joins, he won't have a camera, but he'll be ready to join. I
think there was responses as well to the potentiality argument.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh no, did Deborah or people on server respond to it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, look, I understand the argument behind potentiality, but I don't think it trumps the bodily autonomy side of it. And look, I was really I've always agreed with the bodily autonomy side of it, the violin maker argument that's often put forward for it. The vaccine stuff really challenged my view on the bodily autonomy stuff, because a lot of people who were pro-life came out and said, yeah, well, you can't mandate vaccines because, well, what about bodily autonomy? And it was, it made me realize that it's a nuanced thing, right?
So can I speak to the potentiality? Okay, so yes. If you're going to go that route, and when you think about this argument from potentiality, you think about, oh, well, this person might be the next president, or this person might be a world-renowned teacher or professor, something to that effect, right? Well, what if this person is also a serial killer or a rapist? Or, you cannot take just one side of that potentiality. You have to take it all sides. This person could be completely deranged. This person could be, have massive childhood cancer suffering. You don't know.
No, but one thing I just wanted to add to that is when I make the potentiality argument, I'm not saying that part where, oh, what if there are this and that and the other. What I mean is like the potential for just life in general, right? How it's morally dubious for someone to cut off or limit just the ability for someone to have life, right? Obviously, the child in the womb isn't conscious or anything; they don't know they're about to have life, but still, if they were like, if ghosts did exist and they could see that they were just limited, they were cut off based on their parents' choice, you know, one could make the argument that it's morally questionable to have limited that person.
Well, then it's morally questionable to get into a vehicle because there's a potential for death. It's morally, you know what I mean? You have potential everywhere you go. There's always potential in every aspect, whether it's of life or whether it's of death. So to live in that type of fear without, like, I love the quote by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Once you take a woman's choice for her own sovereignty of her and making her own decision, you have then put her in a class of being less than a human with rights to be responsible. So now you're taking away her ability, her potential to be a fully responsible person making decisions for herself. You've just lowered her to a very low class. And that's exactly what they just did. You might have potential for life, but now you've removed my potential to be a responsible person. Because my choice might be life, but it should still be my choice. Removing that, I'm now a child in men's eyes.
What do you think about like the arguments just to pivot this whole thing into a different direction? What do you think of the arguments about like how late term abortions should go? Like, so, you know, can we abort a baby 1 day before the mother is due? Like, like if the fetus is viable, should that person be required to give birth?
Well, if you define life as something that has taken a breath, then the baby could be out for a considerable amount of time before it takes a breath.
Yeah, and I've heard that argument. I think it's a good philosophical. Is there anyone that actually does that? Like, that's
No,
I've heard that argument before. Like,
they don't
actually happen? You get to 1 day.
They
before?
don't do that. They don't do that. They don't do that. What
At that
happens?
stage, you know you're having a baby, right?
Well, at a certain point, they don't do abortions at that point. They do C-sections. So at a certain point, and that's usually the doctor's decision what they're going to do at that point, but at a certain size, you don't have an abortion, like a vaginal abortion anymore. You have a C-section.
Isn't that why the 21 weeks isn't it at 21 weeks? So medically, anything before 21 weeks is considered an abortion. Anything after 21 weeks is considered a birth of some form.
I believe
the 21 weeks was so significant in
the baby can live outside of the womb after 21 weeks.
Gotcha. Okay, so it might
okay, but that's debatable, right? Because that can only happen with extreme medical intervention. So that's, I mean, even that definition is blurry. Those lines are blurry because you can't just give birth at that point and go home, right? You have to have massive amounts of medical intervention for that child to live. And so that's further.
And the only way to get it out is C-section unless you go into spontaneous labor, which is unlikely. And at 21 weeks will usually be stopped through more intervention.
Oh, and that's another point of this whole thing, that this entire argument is women are terrified because if they have a miscarriage, and there's 2 women in the United States right now who are in jail right now because they had miscarriages, and or they're saying they had miscarriages, and the courts don't believe them and believe they got an abortion, and they're in jail now.
And when you couple that with, there was a SCOTUS, and when you look at all of SCOTUS's decisions this week, and I posted this up on David's Discord earlier, that this is now a credible scenario, right? A young woman or a young rape victim doesn't realize she's pregnant, goes to the hospital complaining of stomach pains, has a miscarriage. The doctor considers it to be suspicious. There's now no civil penalty if a police officer doesn't read you your Miranda rights, as per a SCOTUS decision earlier in the week. So the young girl, not knowing what to do, says something that may be considered incriminating before she speaks to a lawyer. She can be charged with murder, lose her right to vote, right? That's now a credible scenario in some US states. It's, yeah.
Prabish has actually asked a good question for once. Sorry, Prabish. But he...
Poor Prabish. Look, we want both sides.
He's fighting. He's fighting.
Right?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. He's fighting.
Yeah,
but
that's
I think maybe it would, on the like term abortion, maybe everyone could say like what their actual position is on that. Like, what would your prescription be on terms of like cutoffs and stuff?
Not personally, but like when should there be a law against it? And if you don't want to say something because you haven't thought about it enough, maybe that's a better option. But
Well, so my own personal decision would probably be around 13 weeks. And my thought process behind that is when the nervous system has finally been fully developed. So I would say that like 12 weeks is probably a good cutoff point. Because when you have the nervous system and the brain is starting to form, you might have a fully formed nervous system, but when is the brain receiving those signals to determine that it is pain, right? So I would say 12 weeks is a good cutoff point. And a woman has had enough time to find out whether she is pregnant or not. I've seen 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Most women don't know they're pregnant at that point. And 3 weeks, I don't even know if a pregnancy test can determine that you're pregnant at that point. I think you'd have to have a blood test to determine whether you're pregnant or not at 3 weeks.
What about,
I don't think a regular stick is going to pick that up.
So just from a Google search, and just to remind everyone, everything on Google is 100% true. But it says that for me, it's consciousness. That's like a big part, even though I'm kind of called bullshit on what consciousness actually is. But between 24 and 28 weeks of gestation is when consciousness starts to develop.
Well,
so for me, that's where I would draw the line. Would
that coincide with the consciousness and the signals of pain to the brain?
I guess so, but I don't know enough about this.
And see, that's where I'm kind of drawing the line, is like, I don't want something feeling pain. And so.
But it's also like, okay, let's say it's 28 weeks, right? Or 28th week of gestation, and it's fully, we know it's probably fully conscious, but then you find out that your partner's been cheating on you or something, and the child's going to grow up, or like, let's say you find out it's not you were raped by someone or something, and you find out that it was I don't know. Just think of some example. Maybe the person you slept with is your brother, and you didn't realize until you do a DNA test, and you're like, oh no, we're related. Like, at what stage? Like, after, like, what are there circumstances that you could abort a fetus later than 28 weeks? 28 weeks for you.
There needs to be some practicality built into the law. Like, I think we need to know, like, when do women generally find out? Like, how long does it take for them to make a decision on this sort of stuff? Like, I think it's good to make an argument about like consciousness, but there also needs to be practicality built into it, I think.
And even the practical side of it has its problems, because it's not like a pregnancy is following a red bouncing ball, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's very different. Like, it's very different for each person. For me personally, I think the line should be up to the patient and the doctor. I think some of the scenarios that David brought up could obviously inflict a fair level of emotional distress on the mother as well. And I think we're at a place with healthcare that we understand that mental health is just as important as physical health. So for me, it'd be between the doctor. If there's an agreement between the doctor and the patient and experts that the baby should probably be aborted for the mother's health, then yeah, that'd be. But I agree with the argument on not wanting to cause pain, but I understand that that's a really personal thing as well. So.
Mm.
Mm.
And see that there again, that I think that goes right back to why this was precedent for 50 years, is because it's such a personal decision.
Yeah.
Because each and every scenario is going to be completely different.
Mm.
There's also an argument, I guess, around like how much influence does the law actually have on what people do? And I think in this circumstance, like you could say, yeah, the cutoff is 20 weeks or whatever, but like how much does that actually influence what people are going to do given the right circumstance?
I think that there was a study, I wish I had these on hand, but there was a study that showed that abortion laws don't decrease the amount of abortions. It
Right.
just decreases the amount of
Safe
legal
abortions.
Safe abortions, yeah.
Yeah.
Safe
Contraception
abortions.
reduces, like availability of contraception at any age without any questions asked certainly has a reduction in abortions, but they're after that as well. So
yeah, the thing that kind of baffles my mind is even if you were a pro-life advocate, sorry to generalize, but it tends to be the people who are pro-life advocates, the conservative Christians, who are also pushing against things that stop. Like, it's just that the beers are obviously catching up, but we have like abstinence-only education in America in all the red states, and those states have the highest rates of teen abortion, repeat teen abortion, teen pregnancy, because they teach abstinence-only sex education because they don't want their kids learning about like oral sex, condoms, and stuff in school. They teach them things like, yeah, and then it doesn't work, right? Like abstinence, it's like that thing. It's like
What a shock!
Yeah. So it's like if you wanted to reduce the amount of abortions that are happening, we have studies on this. Teach sex education, offer free contraception to people in clinics, in school. But the same groups of people that don't want women to get abortions are also fighting for people to get free contraception or good sex education. It's just bizarre. Like it's yeah, I don't know.
This is primitive. It's primitive thinking from a primitive worldview. This concept of what they believe to be moral doesn't line up with our common modern understanding of what is moral and good or right or free even. I mean, many of these conservative Christians will spout and yell from the rooftops about, oh, freedom this, freedom that. I'm a patriot, flag waving and all, right? And now all of a sudden, guns have more rights than I do.
Yeah.
Just to add to that discussion about the cutoff week. So when you two said, when Deborah said that the cutoff week should be, what was it, 7 weeks? Because that's when the nervous system, what was it again? Sorry? 13 weeks. Sorry, 13 weeks, because that's when the nerve system is, and was it the brain as well can like comprehend that, the nerves?
I don't know when the brain can comprehend that, and if the brain is fully conscious, if you know, like sentient at that point, I think David said that was at 28 weeks.
Yeah.
A Google search says 24 to 28 weeks. Yeah.
24 to 28 weeks. So I don't know if the nervous system is sending signals to the brain at that point, and are they being received as pain before 28 weeks, 24 weeks?
So what would sorry, go on. Hello, but can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. Yeah, what's it called? Because I was just gonna say, like, wouldn't that be sort of contradictory? Because like, if they can feel the pain, or they have a nervous system, but they're not conscious until 28. What is truly like? When are they conscious, right? Because then it's an issue of feeling the pain and knowing the pain. So it'd be hard to determine which one is the true cutoff for when a baby
Right.
should get aborted.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
why I went back and said, well, all that said, it still should be a private decision between a woman and her doctor.
But I just think like once the baby can feel like or is conscious by whatever Google's definition of consciousness is, then that would mean it essentially becomes murder, right? One could argue that. Because
well, you'd have to
murder-
define murder.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
true.
so but now you're conflating pre-birth with life, but you don't have the same aspect on the other end of the spectrum. So when somebody stops breathing, they're essentially dead, right? So if breath is death, then breath should be life.
Yeah, I wonder though if I was to throw a really, and this is going to be hard for people to kind of answer, especially if you're pro-choice, but if we discovered this like magical gene that as soon as an egg was fertilized, or whatever, that it had the full subjective experience somehow of a fully grown adult person, would that change your answers at all?
Probably, yeah. It'd definitely play a part in changing the cutoff period.
Can you repeat that, David?
So if we had like we discovered something, and it's like some a medical thing, and it demonstrated that that fetuses, as soon as they were conceived, like as soon as like the sperm met the egg, that thing had the exact same experience as a fully grown adult, would that change the perspective on abortion?
It would for me.
Probably.
It would definitely play a part.
Because then I would wonder if there are people who remember, like, but if you don't have the brain's development to hold memories, then
let's say when you take your first breath, you forget everything. Like this is an insane hypothetical, but the point is essentially like if we're making the argument for sentience, for nervous systems, for experience, for consciousness, then it would seem I'm testing the consistency of everyone's arguments here, because if there would be the case that it wouldn't change your mind, then it seems that consciousness argument isn't actually what's holding you back from that perspective, from changing perspective. Does that make sense?
I think I just sorry if anyone wants to make the answers to that.
But see, here's the thing. This is my personal, for me, that would be my understanding and what I would set for me, not for anybody else. I will never dictate somebody else's choices in life. That's between them and their doctor. That's what I've been consistent about this whole time. It's like, for me personally, I might think this, I might think that, and I might change my mind later down the road with more information, because that's now, what I am embracing, having, being out of religion now. But for somebody else, they get to decide that, because I think it's a woman's right to choose what she does with her body, her health, her future, her, goals and aspirations are all affected by that decision. It's not just the child's life. It is her next 18 years as well. Whether she's paying child support, whether she's, up 4 hours a night because of colicky baby, whether she has the opportunities because she's now a mother or not, or a mother again or not. There's a lot of women out there who already had 3 or 4 children, didn't want another one. Oops, found out she's pregnant. I can't do this again. I just physically and mentally can't do this again, and decides to not be pregnant anymore. That there are so many different scenarios that it should absolutely 100% be a woman's choice, not mine.
The thing that kind of I'm going to kind of touch on in my video is I'm going to go through, is the Bible pro-choice? Hey, Mr. Arthur. I'm going to go over, is the Bible pro-choice? And then I'm going to, answer that. But then the second part is, what if you were pro-choice? Oh, no, sorry. Is the Bible pro-life? My gosh, the beers. Is the Bible pro-life? And then, at the end of the conversation, I'm like, well, what if you are pro-life? What does that mean, right? And I'm going to try and build an argument of like how you could be pro-life if you accept the Bible as like a wholly inspired word of God. But then I would also say, but if you are pro-life, that would also mean logically that you would do X, Y, Z. And there's things like you would let anyone into your country that needed refuge. You would let absolutely anyone, because the inconvenience of having a bunch of murdering rapists from some country you don't like come in is just an inconvenience for you, just like it is for any woman who wants to get, an abortion. It's like, and it can be life-threatening having murdering rapists come into your country, but unfortunately, that's what you got to do if you're pro-life. If children need support from the state, you need to give them that support from the state because you're pro-life. Like, there are all these things that go into being pro-life that I think that a lot of people who are pro-life don't consider. Like, if removing guns from America reduce the number of people dying, then you would have to remove guns. Like, the logical extensions of being pro-life doesn't just fit whatever you kind of like, it has to fit everything. If you're pro-life and guns increase deaths in America, sorry, you can't have guns in America. Like, there's like, if you're going to make arguments like, well, we want guns for whatever reason, then it doesn't work. Like,
a lot of issues overlap with
yeah.
So most of the conservative Christians are pro-life, but they don't look at they're not a fan of the entitlement programs like free school lunches, right? This is where I think there's a huge disconnect in the logical, critical thinking that even me, when I was a conservative Christian, didn't have. Because for me, it was like, if you don't work, you don't eat, right? So these people are poor because they're not working or whatever, or they're mooching the system. You're pro drug testing for welfare, but you're not looking over here and understanding that there are some people who have real addiction problems. It's a disease. It's not something that they're just choosing, right? Some people are forced into that because they're just injected to be manipulated and controlled for human trafficking reasons or whatever. You don't know what these people have gone through in life to be in the situation that they're in. And absolutely, you're pro-death penalty. I was pro-death penalty for many years. And I did not realize the disconnect between being pro-life and pro-death penalty.
Yeah.
Oh, and Arthur's muted. I don't know if he wanted to speak, but he should know he's muted.
Cool. And David, I'll take that opportunity. I do have to go. I have another catch up I need to head off to. It was wonderful chatting with everyone. It was nice to meet you, Deborah. And
nice to meet you.
Guys in the chat, please join the Discord. I would love to take this conversation. Please, I'll be waiting for you in the Discord. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, we're looking at you, Prabesh. You better join the Discord. We welcome everyone.
And I'm saying that seriously, Prabesh. It can become an echo chamber if we don't have enough voices on the other side, and that's what we're looking to do with the Discord. So make sure if you want to, if you don't like something we've said and you haven't been able to jump on, join the Discord. We'll have a chat about it there.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. See everyone.
See you, boss.
See you, P-Buns. Just so everyone knows, we probably will wrap up in like 15 minutes. But it's been a great conversation. Yeah, what were you saying, Jacob?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I may, just touch up way back on the miracle gene drug thing. So with that, right, it becomes a metaphysical issue because what you say is that they get to have a subjective, what was it, a subjective memory or something like that
Yeah,
before
like
they're even born. Yeah, but like subjective conscious. The thing is, it's like it becomes that Schrodinger's cat thing where it's like, well, is it even a subjective conscious if once they're born, once they take their first breath, it all goes away? Does it even exist if it doesn't happen before they can express it? You know what I mean? It's like the cat, sorry, not the cat. Yeah, the cat in the box or the tree that falls and you don't hear it. Is it even a consciousness if it doesn't get expressed?
Well, what are your youngest memories as a child? Like how young do you remember?
I was
That's a good
2.
question.
My mum threw my
Because
dummy to the dingoes at Fraser Island.
Oh, really?
my earliest
Yeah.
memory would probably be like a dream, but I don't remember what age I had that dream. So, yeah.
Yeah, but
My
you're pretty
youngest
much
memory
you're
is
like 6 years old, so
months.
6 months.
6 months.
Wow.
But I didn't remember the memory until I was 16 years old.
One thing, like, I don't know how true this is, if this is like pop science or whatever, but apparently memories are you just remembering the last time you remembered it. So people's memories of like, so I think I have this memory of when I was 2, but what it could have been is somebody told me this story and I remember them telling them the story as if I remember the original.
Right. So what I woke up one morning and I'm laying in bed and I'm like 16 years old and all of a sudden this memory, full conversation and everything comes back to me. And I walked into the living room and I said, Mom, I think I had a memory come back to me and I don't, and she's like, okay, well, what was it? And I was like, oh, okay, well, we're at a neighbor's house and they had kittens or puppies and like you're showing me off to these neighbors and everybody's fawning over the kittens. And so you walk me in the stroller back to the house and halfway between the neighbor's house and our house, you get down in front of me and you touch my cheeks gently and you're like, I think you're cuter than any kittens. And she's like, you remember that? You couldn't have been more than 6 months old. And she had never told anybody that story. How would I have known that other than my own memories? Because I actually remember like seeing her come down to me. It wasn't like I'm seeing this as being told from a third party observation. Like I remember being held. I remember her coming down to me. That's way different.
Well, to touch on the memory or the remembering that memory thing, the thing is with that though, like I've had that memory of this dream for like ever since I had that dream. Like I remember remembering having that dream well after I woke up for it, and then I remember a few years later remembering that dream. Like so, it's been a continuous thing throughout my life. So
Right.
I don't think you could make that argument for it. Yeah.
I think Christopher not Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins
Hume.
said this in one of his books. No, not David Hume, Daddy Hume.
Daddy Hume.
No, one of the, I think he said it in one of his books. He has this distinct memory of growing up in Africa, and getting stung on the foot by a scorpion. And he says he was outside, he got stung on the foot, he ran inside, but his mum remembers it completely different. His mum says, no, you were inside, you got stung, and you ran outside, or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like 2 very distinct memories that were the opposite, but had some similarities. And he said that he didn't, like he said that his mum swears by this, and he swears by this. So he's like, he doesn't know what happened in the past. Or there's been times where I've thought that I've done something or said something, and I look back at the footage of that, and I'm like, oh, I didn't do anything like that. Like I've just changed it so much in my head.
You're remembering it wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about memories because it's like sometimes, yeah, they're so amorphous and kind of all over the place.
Did Mr. Arthur have questions or like points?
Yeah,
I don't know.
A private chat. he made some points and he asked what we thought of them.
I didn't understand what he was talking about. Maybe they don't want God to have less worshippers.
Because I think what he's saying there is, in terms of abortion, the reason why a lot of Christians are against abortion is because they don't want God to. They don't want God to have less people worshiping Him. Like henceforth, abortion is limiting worshippers. But even then, you could just say, well, what if they don't become worshippers?
We have a very on point comment. What is a woman? Thank you,
Princess Peach
Fuzz. Thank
so
you.
it's funny because I think they have a gotcha here, but a woman is somebody who is pregnant in the context of this discussion, who is seeking an abortion specifically. Like, that's not a gotcha. That's pretty easily definable.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of chromosome differences that we are actually understanding nowadays. So you can have a variation of XX and XY chromosomes that can be pregnant. And so we're understanding of our biology is vastly becoming much more in-depth and nuanced than we ever suspected or understood before. And because we haven't really studied chromosomes up until the modern history, it's not been fully understood or comprehended in science. It's so ever evolving and changing right now. But I mean, I don't know if that answers the question or not, but it's something we're going to have to look into more to fully answer that question. And I don't know if she wanted a colloquial answer or something that is much more in depth scientifically speaking. But
in what context are you asking? Like, when you ask that question, what is a woman? There needs to be some context associated with that. Yeah. Like, are we talking about like culturally, what is a woman? Or are we talking about like, I don't know, what are we talking about exactly?
Right.
Something that just sorry, go David.
I was going to say, to me, when someone asks a question like that it always comes across like a troll. I'm not trying to put that on Princess Peach Fuzz, but I just feel like someone's
it's a troll
trying
question.
To troll. Yeah.
Nah, something I was gonna say is this just popped into my head, but it's with abortion, right? Let's say like it's a teen pregnancy and they're 14 or 13 years old. Could one person argue, and this is just out of curiosity, but could one person argue if they're not old enough to even vote or whatnot, like should their parents get involved with the choice of the abortion or not, or should it be purely the choice of the person pregnant?
Yeah, because some teenagers are restricted in their autonomy in some aspects, aren't they?
So well, that just popped into my head.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because, yeah, while a 13-year-old's prefrontal cortex is not fully developed at that point, it is still her body.
If I may ask, when does the prefrontal cortex fully develop again? Is it like 22 or?
It's 25. It's 25.
You're Jacob. You just don't understand because your prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, my prefrontal cortex isn't developed yet.
It's 25, and we know this because of the car insurance, or not car insurance, but car rental companies have done extensive studies. And so in the United States, you either have to have a much higher insurance premium on renting a car if you're under 25, or you sign liability waivers, or you have a co-signer so that you can actually rent a car under the age of 25 in the United States. Well, these studies were done, and that is how they're not being charged with age discrimination, because of those studies have proven that the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed by then, right? So there's
that's interesting.
Right. So while they can verbalize the full safety measures, putting that in practice, we know they don't do that, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I looked at those studies and I was like, okay, well, if the prefrontal cortex, which mandates like memory and logical, good decision making, things of that nature, then there is no fully informed consent at that point, right? Because a 13-year-old doesn't have the ability to give fully informed consent, if she wants an abortion, I think it should be even more allotted to somebody who can't give full informed consent to give birth. So if she wants an abortion, I think it should be more given to somebody who's not that old.
Just to talk about the prefrontal cortex being fully developed at 25, is that like a for sure thing, like everyone at 25, or is it more like in regards to like sexual maturity where it's like
no, it's about that age, right? So
okay.
We know that women sometimes develop quicker than men, but it's only like by a year or two. So you might be able to give a woman fully informed consent choices like 23, right? A lot of different medical and mental trauma can actually stunt emotional growth. We know this psychologically, right? So making choices in the future requires a calm and I think it was Bruce Perry that was talking about this. He's a PhD, and he was talking about the when somebody is traumatized as a child, in order for them to make calm, informed, logical decisions later, they need a calm mind to make those rational decisions later on in life. They're not going to have that because of the trauma. So when you take all of these little nuances into consideration, that is why, because every situation is different, every situation requires a conversation between the woman and her doctor, or a child girl and her doctor, to hash out what is the right choice for that person.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wonder if that's...
Sorry, go David.
I was going to say, I was wondering if that's also the reason why people who are abused end up abusing, because they don't get that prefrontal cortex or whatever development, because they've got that trauma. Yeah, it's like trauma. You traumatize because you've been traumatized because your prefrontal cortex.
Right, it's a trauma response. Yeah,
I mean, that could be part of it. I don't know. I'm not a brain doctor.
I would not doubt it at all.
Yeah, just Jacob, what were you saying, and then we'll wrap up.
I was gonna say I was gonna ask two things, but the first thing was can drug use as well also stunt emotional growth or brain growth?
Especially alcohol use.
Illegal drug use. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I've heard my dad was an alcoholic, and when he got sober, he was like a kid again. And there's this old saying that goes around in rehabs that says that whenever you started getting into your addiction, your life kind of pauses, and then when you get out of that, you like get your life back from where you kind of stopped when you started drinking or drugging.
Wow.
I don't know how true that is, but it definitely seems like that.
It can also limit the rate of growth, like it stunt the growth for forever, because there's like that period up until you're 25, and so like drug and alcohol use before 25 has an impact on your long-term brain health.
And another thing I was gonna say is this is more of a joke, but if I was to like jokingly defend myself from what Miguel was saying, I could say that if it is a sexual maturity thing and the prefrontal cortex develops whenever it is, technically, right, I hit puberty like very early, as you can see by the beard that grows like this long at 15. But what's it called? If I could hit puberty that early, surely my prefrontal cortex will develop earlier.
I reckon
So maybe I
you're
can
gonna.
stay in this discussion.
I think you'll be here till like you're 30. Like your prefrontal cortex will develop when you're like 30. That's what I'm feeling.
Why?
Like you'll get you need an extra 5 years just because.
What are you
you hit
implying with
puberty.
that?
You hit puberty so early that like all your energy was going to every other part of your body, and your brain just sat there like not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
No, I'm
But
just
anyways,
kidding.
yeah. Enough of the joke.
It's well, it's very great having everyone come on. Thank you, Deborah, for coming on at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever time it was. I can see the sun's up now where you are. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, P. Barnes and Mr. Arthur who stopped by. It's been really awesome to have this conversation. And shout out to Deborah's books in the description. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and join the Discord. Tom, did you have anything else you wanted to say about my channel that I've maybe forgotten? No, good. No, that's good.
So I just want to shout out because I didn't hear the title. Crucifying the Bible is my book.
Yes, that is also correct. I apologize. The book is called Crucifying the Bible, and it takes a very good approach to the Bible. So the first half of it, I think Christians can read pretty easily, and the second half of it, it gives you a literal line and says, "Hey, if you want to continue questioning your faith, go here." And I actually have it over there. But Crucifying the Bible, links in the description. So thanks everyone for coming out, and we'll end on this lovely comment that's come in. My earliest nightmare was my grandparents in a tube being burnt to a crisp by the sun. I think I was just scared of it being so hot outside. LeMayo. So thank you to this person who left this comment, and also. The book can be obtained on Audible. It's an amazing book. The same person's asking where can get the book. It's on Audible.
Yeah.
It's on Amazon. Links in the description. The Audible version is amazing. The physical version is amazing as well if you need notes. Actually, screw it.
It's on Audible, Kindle, paperback, and hardback. So there's 4 different options for y'all.
Yeah, I need to give it a proper shout out because look at this thing. So this is the book. But look at the notes that I put in it, and so it's just got you can't really see it. References after references after references.
Yeah.
You can look it up yourself, and if you think that Deborah's wrong, tell her that she's wrong. Her references are right here. You can check it out. So, thanks for coming on, Deborah. And Prabesh, I saw your comment. Please join the Discord. We'd love to have you on there, and I'll see everyone later.
Cheers.
Cheers.